Okay, so the recording started. Again, welcome to Make the Cut and Popup Card Studio question and answer webinar. Tonight is April 22nd, 2014. Thank you for joining us. We also have Susan and Julie helping tonight, so thank you to them. And we'll actually have Julie start in a minute here. Each week I post a thread on the forum to allow people to put their questions for the upcoming webinar. Gives us a little bit of a chance to look at it and see what, if there's any kind of work that needs to be done to demonstrate it. But it also gives us a good starting point. So let's go ahead. Let's see. Julie, are you ready to demonstrate?
I am ready.
Okay.
Yes.
So let me go ahead and switch over to you. Okay. We'll let you know when we come up, and then I'll go on mute. Okay. We see your screen.
Do you see my card?
Yep.
Okay. This is a card that I made this last weekend for a baby shower I went to yesterday, and I needed an envelope. So I went to an interesting place online that we've showed before, but it was a little bit different today, and I thought I'd just show you how it worked. I went to a site to make this envelope for it. The reason I needed to do that, I needed it in a hurry, and I needed a 7-inch wide, or 7-inch this way high, and 7 3/4 inches wide, so it was going to fit my project. So what I did was go to this site, www.templatemaker.n1 online, and they have some very interesting templates here. The other day when I went there to make my envelope, they didn't have all these. They revised the site and they've been adding more and more templates. So here's the envelope maker right here. So I thought I would show you how to do an envelope really quickly using this template maker plus Make the Cut. So you can see template, I think that's a 1, no, it's an L, .nl, www.templatemaker.nl. If you click on the envelope, we just go over here to where the envelope is, you'll see that you have the option to choose your units. So I use inches, and then you type in the width and the height and create, or you can click more options. So I'll click more options to see what happens here. Okay, so I'm going to click inches, and the dimensions that I needed were 7.5 inches wide, and I needed a height of 7 inches. And then they give you some expert settings if you want a larger overlap or larger margins or rounded corners. And then they also give you a file format to export in, PDF or SVG. There are 2 different results depending on which one of these options you choose. So I'll start with the PDF option, and then I'll show you the SVG. And when you're ready, you click on Create. And when you click on Create, you get this template, which was designed originally for printing and just cutting by hand, which you can do if you want. But I don't want to cut by hand. My hands hurt from arthritis and carpal tunnel, so I like to use my cutter. I right-click on this image and Save As, and then I'll just save it to my desktop and click on, still wants to go to my fonts, let's see, okay, save. So it went to my desktop as a template envelope on the right side. So I'm going to go into Make the Cut and just start a new project here. And in order to bring in PDF files, you click on this PDF icon at the top of your screen, and then you go find the file you just saved. And this was template envelope 7.5 by 7 inches, and I click on Open. And then I get that template in there. Now if you cut it just like it is right now, you're going to get 5 pieces, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we don't want our envelope in pieces. So there's a couple things we need to do. Very simple things. The first thing I like to try is to see if I can, if these were grouped. It doesn't say they're all grouped, so I can't really send them to their own layers. What I do need to do is click on it to select the image I just imported and use break down at the bottom, or Control B, to break these pieces apart. Click away from it to deselect, and now I'm going to hold the Shift key and click on just the inside lines that I would like to be my scoring lines. So there's 4 of these lines. And I'm going to click on the smaller of the 2 green plus icons in the lower right corner of the screen, and that'll send my selected lines to their own layer. Now, if I close that eye for that layer, you can see that I have the cutting lines on one layer, on the default layer, and I have score lines on the new layer. I could label these. I'll just double click here and write score lines, and then I'll double click on this layer and call it cutting lines. Now I could cut as is, but it looks kind of ugly, and another thing is it's kind of off the mat. In order to move it and without separating pieces and getting them all in the wrong places, moving around, I'm going to use this arrow icon in the lower left corner to select all. Only I'm going to hide the score lines. I don't want to select them. Click on the eyeball icon on the right side of the screen to hide the score lines. So just the cut lines are selected, and then I'm going to click on the join icon, or Control J, to join them all together. Now you'll notice that the shape is not filled. That means there are open paths, but it will still cut fine this way. All the pieces are together. But I think I would like very much to make this, close all the open paths. You know there are open paths by clicking on the figure 8 icon in the left corner, upper left corner, and then clicking on the pen, and you'll see everywhere there's green dots, there's open paths. And I would like to close them. To close them automatically, I'll go back to selection mode using the top arrow again, click on it to select all, then go to the wrench icon at the bottom, the advanced toolbar, and select Fuse and Weld. This will close the open paths, and now it's filled, so you know that all the open lines are all closed now. I'll just change this to light yellow. And then you have to decide if you want to have solid score lines like this and use an embossing tool or an engraving tool, or even score by hand. You might want to use these solid lines, or you could score with your blade set at a lower pressure. I would usually, if I were going to use the solid scored lines, I would hide the cutting lines and use my other tool, whether it be an embossing tool. I'd probably emboss 3 times with an embossing tool in my machine. Or I might just want to make these score lines to be dash lines so that I could cut them all at the same time. I click on Create New Line Style, and I like to separate them a little bit. Now, I like small dash lines, but I like to separate them, put a little more space between them. So now I have my score lines and I have my cut lines. I can send them all to the cutter at the same time. But right now the design's off the page. So what I want to do is select all pieces by clicking on this arrow in the lower left corner and click on the designs until I get the rotation handle, toggle to the rotation handle. I'm going to hold down the Control key and drag on this arrow 3 times. But I didn't select all, and you see it didn't rotate all together, I don't think. So I'm going to undo, Control Z. I'm going to select everything, Control A. Hold the Control key, now drag 3 times, and then move it up onto the mat. So I only need 1 piece of paper for all of this. And I think I'll join all of these together, clicking on the Select All Shapes and Join. That way I don't see all the selection boxes. And now you see what I have to cut. If I do it all in one pass, I can just go to Cut Project With and select my cutter. I think I use the Zing, and it just cut my project. And then I have my envelope. I'll fold. The way this goes together is that the side flaps are the short flaps. Then I can put some glue on the longer flaps here and fold them up, overlap the side, and it makes a nice envelope. So I'll show you that picture again, what I did in my file here. Here's the envelope that I made. It's quick and easy. The other comment that I should make is that the size of this envelope, the dotted lines represent the size of my card. Enter the exact size that you want to enter. My card measured slightly less than 7 by 7.5, so it fit nicely in this envelope. But the envelope template does not give you any extra room, so you might want to calculate that in your measurements if you're doing a custom size envelope. So I did a few different sizes. I'll just show you quickly. This was a 7 by 7.5. This was a 4 by 10. Now, you notice that it was a little big for 1 piece of paper, so I cut off one end and put an extra flap on here to glue this on. After it's cut out, it was still cut on 1 piece of paper, but I needed a legal size, not a legal size, but a number 10 envelope, 10 inches wide by 4 inches high. And so this was the size I made there. This is an 8.5 by 5.5. I wanted to see how big of an envelope could I make. And this is one size that I sometimes use, a half a sheet of paper for a card. I tried a 6 by 6 square, and it fit very nicely. And I found that I could do an 8 by 8 envelope, and anything larger might have to be pieced if it were square. Then I tried A2 size envelopes for the 4.25 by 5.5. That's the size of a rectangle. And I tried it a couple different ways. And I wanted to show you this because when I imported the SVG file, it brought in dash lines already, and it brought them in layers, which was kind of nice. I didn't have to go through all the layering stuff, but it did not import at the correct size. This was the PDF import on the left, and this was the SVG import from the template maker. So what I'd like to show you the the SVG import and how to resize it. So to do that, I'll just get a new page here. Double click your cursor where you want the design to come in, and you click on the, well, first let's go to the template maker, and we'll try an envelope that is, we'll go to the envelope here with more options, and click on inch, and this time we'll do a width of 5.5 and a height of 4.25. And this time we'll select the option, leave the margins at the default, and then click on SVG, see what happens there. So you click on create, and this is a, if you right click on it and save as, you end up with a PDF again. Well, we didn't want a PDF, so I'm going to back up a little bit. And instead of clicking on create, I want to click on download. See if it'll do a download. Now I clicked on create, and it gave me the SVG. So I right click here, save as, and now it's going to save on my desktop as that envelope 5.5 by 4.25 inches in SVG. So now when I go to my new page and I click on the SVG icon at the top of the screen, and I find that file that I just saved, the SVG file, and open, I get a small shape. Notice that it's 4.2055 inches. Well, that's not what I wanted. That's very small. But when I come over here to the layer and I right click on the layer name and I put to each its own, I end up with my score lines already on their own layer. I'll hide the other layers so you can see. There's the score lines, and they're already dashed. Now this will be fine if you want dashed score lines, but if you wanted them to be solid, there's no way to change them to solid. So if you want them to, let me see if I can change it to no dashes. Ooh, I can. So that's an option if you want to do it that way. The curved lines are still kind of broken up here. So, but I think that's an extra line. If I delete it, let's see what I have. I'll type a 4 and a 3 and look really close at this. The line's still closed. Then I can do like I did before, and I can do the score lines first and my cut lines second. If I want to see that, if I want to close the open shapes on this, I'll hide the score lines, and I'll just select this again and go to the wrench and do a fuse and weld. And then I've got my closed shape, which I prefer for cutting. And now I have a design ready to go, either with solid lines or with to create dash lines, create new line style, and move this over. I've got dashed lines. Only problem is, if you remember, that the size is too small. But that's easily fixed. I did some calculations, and I put them in my note file here, so I'm going to view notes. And it says if you're importing SVG, increase the size by 253.28498%. I'm going to copy that.
Julie,
Yes.
it looks like there's a bug in their program that when they export it, they do, like, so you did 5 and 5.5. It actually puts it out in centimeters instead of inches. So if you do 254%,
Yeah.
it should be exact.
So I got 2.53.2849%. And when I increase the size, to increase the size with if the bug is their problem, then I select it here, and I'm going to leave the lock icon here, and I'm going to just copy that number here, 2.8498%, and press enter. Then I get my exact correct size. To make sure that's true, I made my 5.25 by 4.25 square representing my card, and when I did the multiply, when I resized by the percent, I got the exact same size right there. So that's the the little bug for their SVG file, that if you're using it, you will have to resize until maybe they fix it, or maybe I just need to figure out how to make it not go out. But that's no big deal to resize by that percent. So that's the envelope template. Well, I did that yesterday, but today when I went back to look at it, that site changed, and they added a lot of stuff, and I couldn't help but play with some stuff today. You might want to play with it too. There are some really interesting kind of projects here that are all equally as easy to use. They have this dimensional star, a bag, a cone, a milk carton. There's a pillow box and a box with an attached lid, a heart box, just a box with a detachable lid, a card box. The one that I thought I would like to try was, there's a matchbox. I wanted to try this polygon-shaped box. I really like hexagons, so I'll show you what I did with that. Do you have any questions so far on the envelope?
No questions so far. There's just a comment from Penny, and you'll see that on your PDF, that this is the site that used to be called www.ideogram.nl/boxmaker.
Right, and I have that link at the MTC Toots, and that's the link that I use, and it took me to this new site today. So that was a brand new thing. Well, so I got to playing with it, and I made this, imported this heart-shaped one. This one has a flap that goes around the top, but it doesn't glue shut. So if you wanted it to glue shut for little things that might fall out, you can adjust it a little. This is the one that I had a lot of fun making. It's this hexagon shape, and I made it into a little lantern or a gift box for Mother's Day. Then there's a bag. So I thought I'd show you how I did this lantern, if anybody is interested. Should I go ahead and show you how to do that?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
So in order to make this, I'll walk you through the process. This is the heart box. Notice that it's got a real long thing here, so your heart box turns out pretty small unless you remove this end like this. Then you can make it bigger, and with a flap you can attach it. This was the bag. Had a little problem getting these holes to close, but the way it printed out, it worked fine. Then this is the Hex Box. I just imported it here and resized it so that it would fill my 12 by 12 paper. And then I thought, what if I want windows in my box, to maybe make it a cookie box and wanted people to be able to see in, or I could have a whole bunch of windows, a window on each side. So I just added windows to fit the sides, and then another square, the white square representing acetate. cutting acetate. So there's the acetate cuts here, and then windows for the box here. So when I put the boxes, the windows on the box, and then selected the box and the windows, and then hid the score lines, then I was able to just do a join using the join icon, and it made holes in the box. Then I could cut the acetate to fill in, to cover the holes, and glue the acetate on before I assemble the box. Then another option is to fill in these boxes with whatever you want. And I thought, well, for Mother's Day, I'll do some flowers. So I did some flowers, and it came out like this. I used this 6-pointed star, since I had a hexagon theme, to make these little flowers, and then welded all the, I did a shadow. So I can show you how to do this. It's pretty quick. I click on the import basic shapes, and I just type found the 6-point star, double click that, and this is the technique that we used a long time ago to create a flower out of a star. To do that, you just, with the star selected, you click on the shadow icon, and I'll just shadow it at about a 0.1, increase it until the outside shape looks more like a flower. So the more rounded that I get, I use a corner join around, it starts taking shape like a flower. So I accept that. And I get rid of the star in the middle. I don't need it. Just select it and hit delete. Now I want to do an inset shadow. I click on this, and I'm going to put a minus 0.2, I think. No, I think I used a 1. Minus 0.1. Yeah, that's good. And that gave me a little frame here. If I select them both and join, then I've got a frame. I think that's still too skinny. I'm going to undo, Control Z, undo. We'll try it one more time. Maybe I'll do a minus 0.15. I want this frame to have some substance so it doesn't cut too thin. And then join. Now I have one of these, and I just made a bunch of these various sizes to kind of fill in the box. So if I take this, I'm going to copy it, Control C. I'm going to go back to this window here and do Control Shift V, which pastes in place. Then I can start overlapping this shape and duplicating it, as long as it kind of undo. I like to, let's see, box. Copy this as the size of my window. And come back over here, Control Shift V. And from there, I just used Control and Shift and drag a flower off and resize it. So I made a number of these. And the way you could do any shape. If you wanted to do it for Father's Day, you might do stars. But the way I filled in the shape was to, I'm going to select this and send it to the top, put it, move layer to bottom so we can see what we're doing. I'm going to overlap each of these shapes either on the edge of the box or on another shape. And just continue until I have the box full. And you can, so sometimes I needed to rotate them press a click to get the rotate handle and overlap, and then I can make a number of these. I can control shift and drag again. Oops, got the wrong one. And just make as many as you want. Once you have them overlapped the way you want, and I could duplicate and overlap them. And flip them and mirror them however you like. Making sure they're overlapping the shapes or the edge. And then I can select them all, at least all the stars. I don't need to select the box. And weld. Once they're all welded, then I can copy that and take it over to my windows here. I'm going to type Control-Shift-V and show you that when I add it to a window, and notice that the shape is behind the actual box, I'm going to hold the Shift key and select my box, then I'm going to weld. Hopefully it won't crash. Looks like it's going to crash. It's welding all the paths together. And now I have the shapes in a window. If I wanted to do all of them at one time, I'd do Control-Z to undo and just move that back. What I did, do Control-Z again. What I did was I made one set of these, and then I used Edit Duplicate to make 6 sets and separated them by 1.15 inches so that I had not just one set of these, but I had 6 of them. So if I get this over here in place and I go Edit, Duplicate, Duplicate, I have 1 row, 6 columns, and I think I use 0.15, maybe a little bit more for this particular set. You can just type in any number that works for you and then apply. And then you can copy the whole thing into your design. I select them all, go to Edit, Copy, and go back here, Control-Shift-V, Edit, Paste, and then move them into position. And if I like the way they look, right arrow over a little so they're overlapping. Then I can select, I'll hide my score lines before I weld. That will help. And then weld. Much faster without the score lines showing, I think. So you could use stars or you can use flowers. Oh, it didn't like that. Undo.
I think you still had your windows that you were talking about earlier still in there. The acetate and the other windows. Turn off your third layer.
Yeah, you're right. So Now I'll show the, I don't have acetate layers on this.
I think you have the rectangles there, so just move the stars up to their own layer. Just select your stars, move them up to a different layer, and then close that third layer.
I also like to join the stars, or whatever shapes I'm going to weld. So I'm going to join them, and then move them to their own layer. Yeah, you're right, I had the acetate open. So when that welded, it hit it all. But the other thing I don't want is that I don't want these on top because I'll change the color. So I'm going to move that layer to the bottom. And now, the other thing that I notice about this is that there's not enough connector to the right side. Let me open this layer and send that to the top. I'll hide that layer. It's very helpful to have something in that lower corner. And one other thing that I did, I didn't want them all the same, so I flipped every other one. And it's helpful to have each shape welded to another shape in at least 2 places. I just quickly did this one for demonstration purposes. So if I kind of weld that to this shape, you can see that I'd probably get a little better connection, top and bottom. Now I'll move that layer to the bottom. Move layer to the bottom and select all and then weld. And the acetate layer is for cutting out of the acetate separately, and you would glue that in before you start assembly. And that's kind of important if you want the acetate window. It's not necessary if you've got if you're going to do a little lantern, like I think I'm going to do with mine. I really like those cute lanterns. So when I cut this, I can cut it all at once. But I'd like to show you some pictures and give you some cutting hints here. This is the envelope. Let's see. Got a slideshow and I want to go to the next one. Learn how to use it. This is the bag. These are the boxes and the heart box. So this is the lantern that I made, and I kind of did this in steps, but this particular picture, you see where the score lines did the dashes in this heavy cardstock. This is Whirlwind Double Mates. It's got one color on one side and another color for the outside, and I really like the effect of that. But I don't like the effect of the dashed score lines on this heavy cardstock because, especially two-tone, you can see the inside color through the slashes. So this is where you might want to make your score lines solid and use a scoring tool or use a embossing tool or your blade reduced pressure to give you that a better look. Now this one shows how you fold it. You do a valley fold here and a mountain fold here, and then before you glue anything, you fold on all your score lines, and you'd put your acetate in at this point or even before folding, and then you can get it ready, glued together, and the top is open like this. You can see the score lines here, valley fold and mountain fold. And then you just push down on the top and it pushes all together like a flower. It's really pretty, but again you see the places where the score lines are, and I think that's why I would want to use a solid line for scoring. And then we end up with this lovely box. So I just I was just going to show the envelope tonight, but after I got this made, I thought, oh, I got to show you that. So, any questions?
I'm answering one right now, so I'll do it verbally. The question was, could you do a Boolean join when you create the flower area? And the answer is yes, but with Boolean join, so a Boolean join union would be most of the time the equivalent of a weld. The issue with the Boolean join is you have to have exactly two shapes. You can only have two shapes, but you must have two shapes. So you would have to do joins or welds beforehand to get to the two shapes you want to do, unless you're only working with two shapes to start with. Teresa says, great job.
I did try the Boolean join, and the trick to this is to have the windows joined to the body of the box, and then you can just weld. If you try to weld your shapes to your box, it doesn't work even with Boolean join. You've got to have an open shape to weld the inner shapes to. And so Boolean join just totally wasn't necessary because it's just the same as weld, which is the union of the Boolean join. So there's no need to really do Boolean join.
Okay, any other questions for Julie?
Any other questions?
There's none right at the moment, so we'll go ahead and continue on. Let me, hang on a minute. Let me switch over here. Okay, so you should see my screen here in a minute. Okay. So that was Julie's demonstration. The next question is from Sue, and Sue, I know you just joined back with us. So I guess while I'm going to be showing this real quick, what exactly are the problems you're having? So Sue's question is importing from the gallery and import the library files on PCS. So let me start with PCS because that's probably the simpler of the two, because right now, if you go to libraries or to the library section here, are you saying that you can't import any of the online content? And if that's the case, that is because there is none available yet. That's not been turned on. Or are you talking about that you can't import any of the basic shapes in a sense, or your shapes if you have any? Anyway, to import these, you can just double click on them to bring them in, and they should come into your wherever your edit plane is. It'll go in the upper left hand corner if it's on a vertical one. So Sue, did you join? I thought you joined back with us. It won't respond to your double click. And there might be an issue with your computer. You can't really drag and drop them in this case. And I don't think you can't copy and paste from here. That's interesting. It should when you double click on them, it should work. Your silhouette works fine. What silhouette are you talking about? Your shapes under you created something in your. Okay, I may have to work separately with you. So you reinstalled Popup Card Studio and you got it to work once. And your Cameo, so you're saying Silhouette Studio. Okay, okay, I may have to work with you separately. Okay, so you're saying that double click doesn't work at all on Popup Card Studio on your machine. If you start a brand new project, go to the shapes and just pick one and double click on it, it does not do that. Okay, so we'll have to work on their, are you running on a Windows or a Mac? It's got to be Windows because PCS doesn't run on a Mac. Okay, that was a stupid question. Yeah. That's interesting. I don't know that we've ever run into that problem before. Okay, I'll probably have to work separately.
Right.
Yes.
The only time I've had to help somebody is when they were using a 180, and it was way up. It was way up high. It didn't land sort of in the view of where they were thinking it should have.
Okay.
So I don't know.
Yeah,
if
but
that
if she,
helps.
so Sue, when you started shape, you can see the whole, in this case, purple grid. Let's see, when we do a 180. Oops, I don't want to do that. So in this case is what Susan was saying. If you leave this, even that it comes at the, oh, but if you're on the back one, it won't, right? Let's do this. No, that even does it. Okay. Yeah, you use the 90 and you can see the whole purple grid, right? Okay. Then there must be some issue there, so I'll have to work offline with you on that. On your make the cut in the gallery, what's the problem? So to get to the gallery for everybody else that's listening is you would click on this icon, and then you can select search terms. You can look for this particular user. You can look for SVGs or make the cut projects. You can sort by date. I usually just see what's the last thing there. I'll do the descending and then do a search. I'll get 30 of the last things provided. And most of these will probably be make the cut. I don't see any SVGs in this particular one. So let me go back towards the beginning. The ones that have sort of this crisscross is an SVG. And I'll import directly in go back, any of these would be, you would download and it would actually bring it up as a new file. So you can't use this part. So it doesn't come up. So when you click on this, you don't get anything?
She says she can use this, but I think she can't use basic shapes.
Okay, so what was your question? In the webinar questions, you said you can import from MTC files from the gallery. So what's that? What a problem are you having there? Oh, you can't use the basic shapes from, so not the gallery, it's the basic shapes? Ah, gotcha. So same thing here, you can't double click on this and bring them in? Okay. Then there's something wrong with your double clicker. That's interesting. I'd have to look at that. Do you have any other programs that are running? What OS are you running? And what version? Windows. You want Windows XP, Windows 7, Windows Vista, Windows 8.1, Windows 8, Windows 7. And you're double. Okay. Let me work offline with you. Do you have any? Yeah. So Liz is suggesting I was going to suggest that too. But so Liz is suggesting that you check the mouse properties to see if you're double clicking. If it's set too fast or too slow, or if it's disabled, or sometimes people put things on one click. So instead of double clicking, like to start a program, they just have to do a single click. But check that out. But you saying the double click works on your other programs? Yeah. So that's kind of weird. I mean, it's using standard Windows double clicking, so there's nothing special with the Make the Cut. So that's unusual. Okay, send me an email, Sue, to remind me, sbrianw@gmail.com, and we'll try to get this straightened out. Or open up a support ticket, which you can go to the makethecut.com site and go to support and then say open up a ticket. Okay. Anyway, for basic shapes, basically both in Popup Card Studio and in Make the Cut, when you bring something up. And also, here's another question for you, Sue. When you're in text and fonts, can you double-click on a glyph and have it come in? So you can double-click these, and they come in. That's even weirder. She says yes for people that can't read my screen. That's not on the video. Okay, yeah, just send me an email and we'll work on that. We'll figure out what's going on here. Okay, so the next question, I think all that back and forth with mostly her and I. Yeah, she did try to reload the program. Barbara, thanks for that suggestion. Okay, I think everything else we handled. Okay. Okay, so the next question is from Diane, and this just has to do in general with the GoToWebinar. You can register or not register. The advantages of registering is you'll get the email reminders and et cetera, and that you know, you can have it set it to you in your time zone or whatever time zone you want it in. But there is no additional cost. Andy basically pays for an account at GoToWebinar, and you know, he pays for that, and that's why if you want to donate to, every once in a while people say, hey, let's donate. That helps to run both the forum, which is a external service, and the GoToWebinar account. But each webinar's participants don't cost, like it's the same for a webinar no matter what, I guess is the best way to say it. So, Diane, even if you're not sure if you're going to come, I would go ahead and register, because you'll get the reminder emails then. So, and then of course you won't actually connect until you do the connect. Okay. Okay. The next question is from Julie, and she has this. She'd like to know, well, I guess let's stay on the question there, how to make a lampshade with the bell shape, and can you use the conical warp feature for that? So I'll start with, and she gave some dimensions. So I'll start with sort of a generic answer is yes, sort of. But if you notice that the lampshade itself, this is the frame, I guess, that she's trying to duplicate, or that she's going to put it on, it's not really a conical shape, right? It sort of bows in the middle. And then, you know, it's kind of hard to tell what the edges do here, but it looks like it just sort of continues the bow. So you'd almost want to, you know, figure out this template, you know, the template for this, and you can get started with the conical shapes, conical warp, and see how close it gets. You may have to fool with it, or you may actually have to, you know, since if you look at these pieces side by side, they really aren't. You'd almost have to cut them separately, I think, if you wanted to be perfect on it, because in essence you're getting a bow out. I don't know. I'd have to fool with it, but you can do a lampshade in conical warp. You gave the dimensions of 5 by, let's see, where's the top one here? 5 at the top, 12 inches at the bottom, and 8.5 inches high. I'm going to take that 8.5 inches as what we would call the slant height. But regardless, the trick is, so let me start a new project here. So anytime you have a project and you're going to do a conical warp, the one main rule is your top diameter always has to be larger than your bottom diameter. In the case of this, obviously the top diameter is smaller than the bottom diameter. So we really have to look at this and sort of think of it upside down. So instead of the top being 5 inches and the bottom being 12 inches, we're going to say the top is 12 inches and the bottom is 5 inches. So let's start with that. And I always like to start with just anything. You saw I double-clicked on just a glyph, happens to be the quotes from Arial Black, but I just wanted a shape in there because I want to sort of set this up, and I'll tell you why here in a minute. So we want the top diameter to be 12 inches, the bottom to be 5, right? Top 5, and then 8.5 high, 8.5. And the reason I did that is I always like to start with a rectangle that is, in essence, my slant height, which is sort of the height along the edges here, and then starting with the width at, in this case, 26 and 11/16 inches long. And that's because, in essence, I'm going to warp it, and I want the warp to be even around the middle. So I want, you know, I could make a shape any size and warp it and get it to fit. But I want to do the least amount of warping. And when I do the warp, I'd like to have it controlled around the center point. So I'm going to start with a rectangle that's 26 and 11/16 inches wide by 8.5 inches high. I should have said go on that because now I'm going to have to type in those dimensions again. So I'm going to start with a square, and we'll go back and we're going to uncheck the lock aspect ratio so I can do the width at 26 and I think it was 11/16 and 8.5 inches high. And let me just zoom down here a little bit so we can see this a little bit better. Now if I do that same conical warp and go back to my measurements, 12 by 5, right? By 8.5. Yeah. So now you can see with everything everything positioned at, you know, the normal percentage and scaled at normal percentage, my shape fills that cone perfectly. Right? There's no overlap. I don't have to change the scale. I don't have to move it up or down, etc. So that gives me a good starting point. You won't have to do this, but that's just where I start, because if you put any kind of design in there, I'm going to import it and then undo it here in just a second. Oops, not save, Z, Control Z. Because if I was going to do any kind of designs in here, and I don't know what design I'm going to do here, paper words, we'll just put something random in here. Get it roughly in there. So now if I were to do it, everything would be warping around sort of the center line. And you're not going to see it too well here. Let's do this. Make these darker so we can see them. So this is nothing to do with the shade at the moment. I just wanted to show you that by having this sort of basic shape set up ahead of time, you can control the conical warp a little bit more on where the warps are and that kind of stuff. Again, you don't have to do that. You can make things, you can stretch things, you can move things up and down, but this just gives you a good starting point, in my opinion. Now, to sort of see how this, I'm going to leave the words on here for right at the moment. Actually, I'm going to do one more thing here. Let's at least do this so we can read it right side up when we talk about this. The words aren't part of the lampshade. I'm just going to show you that they're part of the lampshade here. The roll view is just a 3D version of this, and because it's so large, it's kind of big. So that sort of looks like the lampshade, except it's right side up. It's a cone where the top diameter is bigger than the bottom diameter. But if we want to sort of picture it as a lampshade, we got to turn it upside down. So I'm going to just sort of scroll it around here, and I got to make it a little bit smaller so you can see it. But you can see that I can spin all the way around here and look at the lampshade. So you have to use your imagination. You don't get the full effect because it's sort of at the bottom here. But at least you can sort of see how it's going to look. And I don't want to import the cone when we do this. Okay, so that's sort of how to work and create a quote-unquote lampshade where the top is smaller than the bottom. Excuse me, the top is, smaller than the bottom, which you normally can't do. You've got to make a top bigger than the bottom. But you can sort of do it this way, and then when you look at it in the rolled-up view, you can turn it upside down, and then when you cut it, of course, you can turn it upside down, or you can rotate it on your mat after it's done. Okay, so the other thing that she wanted here is sort of a scalped edge. So we could, let me go ahead and get rid of the, we don't need the words anymore, and let's make this one color. We could just sort of warp this, import it, and then, put the scallops on, afterwards. That's one way you could do it. I would probably do it, what's this? This is 26, almost 27 inches, and we wanted, I think, six sides. So let's bring in a circle, and we'll make this, put that back on here so we stay circles. So if I do 5, that's going to be too big, so let's do 4.5, 4.25 maybe. Well, here, I'll use a calculator. 26 and 11/16. Actually, let me use the actual number here. Divided by 6. 4.4. Okay, so we'll say 4.45. 4.45 inches. I'm going to bring this, I'm going to select this, I'm going to say align it on the left edge by hitting the L key, and then I want to, let me zoom in here, I want to select just the circle and get it up to where it's pretty much at the top here. And then I'm going to duplicate that, edit, duplicate, edit, edit, duplicate, duplicate. We want 1 row, 6 columns, and let's just do a negative point. 1. Apply and see how close we are at the other end. If we do one more thing here. Oops. The circle's still selected here, so let me just do 4.5. Now when we do the duplicate, we can actually overlap a little bit more. Negative 0.05. And then just okay. Negative 0.55. 5. 0.56. 0.57. That's close enough. We'll hit apply. I'm going to weld those together, and then I'm going to sort of zoom in at this other end here and just see. Oops. I have to bring it in. I'm just going to bring it in a little bit there. Okay. So now if I look at it, I have things lined up. Now, if I weld this to the square or the rectangle, I am going to get, this is now going to be larger than 8.5 inches high. So there's 2 things we can do. We can then, beforehand, so in essence, there's 2 ways to approach it. So let me do it one way first. So I'm just going to say we're going to grow it by this much, and actually I'm going to bring it down a little bit. Oops. Let me zoom in again here. I'm going to bring it down to where the valleys are just above the edge here. I won't have exact edges on the side here, so ignore that for a minute. Actually, no, let me just do it this way first. Sorry, I should have just left it here. And you know what this is here. It's 26 and 11/16. 26 and 11/16. There we go. Now it's exact. So now I could weld it here now, get that, and then let me again change the color here so we can see a little bit better when we do the conical warp. And because now I've, actually let me do another thing here. Let me go ahead and leave that at a lighter color. I think we'll see through it a little bit better here. Yeah, still don't see much. But you can see that obviously my scallops go past the edge, and it's sort of evenly split. You really can't tell here unless I move this. So let me go ahead and move the Y a little bit. Oops. I basically want to bring this edge down to the dotted line. Otherwise, the inside, the circumference won't be, you know, the right circumference for 5 inches. But now our length is longer too. So you could do it this way, and you have this issue. Again, we can look at the roll view and sort of turn it upside down. Oops, always use the wrong key. You know, and look at it. It's going to be pretty straight. It looks like these are flat, but they actually will cut okay. We're such on a huge scale here. So I hit import, and you can see that I end up with this. So we do get a warp around the edges, which may not be what you want, and the size, again, from here to the tips are going to be longer than that 8.5 inches. So let me copy this just so we have that, and then we're going to undo. So the other option is to, between the two of these, make them 8.5 inches high. So we have to move the circles down here. How far do I have to move them down here? Another 1.3 inches. So let's do this. Let's make it easy on ourselves. 1 inch in and 1 inch down. And in the bottom of this, we want, this currently is, let's make this an even number here, 6. So to make it 8.5, I have 6 inches here. So basically, I want to put this top. You'll see what I'm doing here in a minute. It's harder for me to explain with the. So both these together should be the 8.5. Oh, we want to line them up on the left. Okay, so they're 8.5 inches. But now we can adjust the size of the. You know, this up or down to whatever we need it to be, you know, as long as it fits within that area, and we want it to basically be tangent with this area. So if we line the top of this rectangle basically with the center of the circles here, then it should be fairly tangent there. And then we can do the weld, select both of them, do the weld. And then when we do the conical warp, we shouldn't have to adjust anything. Let's go back to 0. And so now we have from, you know, the top edge here is at the bottom, and, you know, the scallops end at the 8.5 inch mark. And then these will still be warped, but not nearly as bad as before, or not nearly as, I shouldn't say as bad. I keep on importing that cone, and I don't really want to do that. Oops. Okay, so there's the original one, and then here's the second way we did it, which would probably be a little bit more accurate. And then just to show you the difference, our inside curve Oops. Okay. I lost something. Oh, because I'm on the wrong one. That's why. Okay. So our inside curve should be almost identical in this case. It might be a little bit off because I had to move. I should probably just change this to a different color. And go back to green. No, that doesn't work any better, does it? You can see there's a little bit of an overlap, or a little bit of a mismatch right up in here. But in essence, we have a pretty good lineup. Yeah, it's a little bit off. But then if you look at the top, we have a little bit rounder scallops and at the right distance. So this will be the 8.5 mark, and instead of this being out, another 2 or so inches, and then these aren't quite so flat. And of course, the third way you could do it is to have this, then take your circles and do it. But again, you'd want to make this shorter, however long your scallops were, depending on what your measurements were. Oops. Try that again. There, did 4.5. And then what this I would do with this one is probably do the wrap around, and we would actually, that's probably going to warp it too much. Yeah, let's change let's reset everything here. There we go. Vertical alignment. 50% should be good, and then repeat with a negative 0.02. We'll see how that works. Oh no, we'll have to. They'll have to be bigger now because this is much bigger, right? So when we did this, the top line is going to be 37 and 11/16. So that's what we would have to, would have to divide that by 6. At any rate, I think you get the general idea. So the issue still is that even when you cut this, and then you might have to put tabs to glue, Julie, depending on, how you're going to attach this. But I think the bigger issue is if you try to attach it to this frame, because you're basically going to have, if they're not separate panels, you're going to have score lines that are in essence curved, and you can do that, but that's going to be difficult to do. And if you did that and then try to lay it flat, it wouldn't lay flat. It's like the inverse of a globe, right? If you try to undo a globe, it does, and push it flat, it's going to be like an orange peel, right? It's going to have cracks at the top and the bottom. And this is in essence the same type of deal. So I don't know if that makes sense or not. No questions?
Thank you. I don't see any other questions.
No. The other thing to think about is, like, if we brought this in, actually I don't think we can do this too well, but let me just try. If we just got the general shape, this middle shape here, let's take it down a little bit. No, a little bit too much. Pretty good. So let me just split this. And get rid of this stuff. But if you think about this, I'm just going to do a quick eraser here.
Can you layer it just to get rid of the outer part?
Oh yeah, yeah, I could. That's a good idea. So get rid of this one, and then we can do a blackout on this one. Okay, so there's your basic shape of one of those panels, right? So if you think about if you duplicate this and try to match these up, you know, this edge with this edge, you can see that it's really not, you know, you can't, it's not easily done with flat, you know, starting from flat paper and then creating that panel effect, that, you know, that inner curve effect on each of the panels. So that's why I'm saying you may actually want to, you know, do the, hang on Susan, you may actually want to do the, cut them separately and then, you know, add a glue tab. Yes, Susan.
It's all right. You just said it. Cut them separately and add trapezoid down it.
Yeah, down the edge, yeah.
Yeah.
So, but even that, you don't want to make the glue tab. You might actually just want to do a couple tabs or something very small, because in essence you're not. In essence, where you glue it is basically where it's going to bend. So you're still going to have, in essence, that curved score line, for lack of a better word. So, you know, it's not, unless you cut it with...
It's a bell.
Go ahead, I'm sorry. Julie?
We call it a bell shape.
Okay.
A bell shape?
Because it curves out and then down.
Yeah.
Yeah. So normally this would be maybe done with cloth or something that has a little bit more give to it, you know, as you're going around. Or I don't know if this is if this is the actual frame you want to do, or if it's something similar. Obviously, it's a metal frame, and you could, you know, creatively modify the frame to have straighter edges, but then you lose that bell effect in essence. So, you know, doing something like this and trying it and cutting it separate with little glue tabs might work. Or just, you know, see how this fits across that frame and how off it is. Okay.
Thank you very much. I think I like the bell shape, so I probably would do the tabs.
Yeah.
To make it be that type of shape that I'm looking for.
So the first thing.
Are you doing it in paper?
Well, I haven't decided if I'm going to do it in paper or fabric.
Well, don't look past. If you do it in paper, you can take the one shape without the tabs. What we do with the material on them is we glue the material exactly the right shape just down on the wire, and then we put a trim over each wire.
Oh yeah, I see what you're saying.
To sturdy it up. So you trim down each wire is holding more of your paper without having to have tabs. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So you'd glue each panel.
Or make it a little larger and glue it to the frame.
Yes.
Have you done this before, Susan?
Yes. With material and with vellum. But what we used is we used a trim to hide
the glue seams.
Each join.
I'd sure like to see your video on that.
See, Susan, you're getting known to be the video demonstrator. You only have a couple on your website, right?
What's that? Yeah,
a couple of videos.
Yeah, not many at all. Liz said you can use trim or washi tape would be nice too.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think I would use beads or something, you know,
yeah,
elegant.
And you can always use them around the bottom as well, to, you know, to blend them in. So.
Okay, so any other question? Yeah, beads would be awesome, Liz said. So I don't know why I'm repeating it, because you can read what people are typing in anyway. At any rate, that gives you a lot of ideas, I guess, to at least start with. And you know, maybe the first part is coming up with the panel shape for the frame that you have, and go from there. Okay, so let's go on to the next question, which is from Diane. So she saves a file or puts something in the well, let's do this one at a time. So she's worked on a file and saved it as an MPC file, and she wants to copy the image to use in another project. And the copy and paste will bring it in. So let's say I have this and I want to copy it into another project. So I'm going to do this, edit, copy. If I go into another project and just do a simple paste, the Control V, it comes in at 1 inch high because my caret size, which is our red cursor, is 1 inch high. And obviously this is nowhere the correct size as this, as we want it to be. So the easiest thing to do, Diane, is to, when you do a paste, don't do a simple paste, do a paste in place, which is a Control-Shift-V. And what that does is, A, put it in, if it's from a project to a project, it puts it at the same spot as, well, I probably moved this around when I did it. Oops. Yeah, so let's start over again. Let's go back to this project and say I have this here. So well, let's make it exact here. 1, 1. So if I do a Control-C, or the Control-C is the same as edit, copy, and then go to the second project and do a paste in place, it doesn't matter where my caret is or what size my caret is, it'll bring it in at the same size, the 5.5, etc., at the same place, X 1 and Y is 1. If you're copying it from an external program like Inkscape or the K&K Studio or Illustrator, you still want to do the paste in place. In that case, because there's not the same concept as a mat in Inkscape and Illustrator and K&K as the same as Make the Cut, it will put it wherever your cursor's at, excuse me, whatever your caret's at, but it will bring it in at the correct size. And I don't have any Inkscapes open right at the moment, but I can show you that. So the key, Diane, is to basically do the paste in place, the Control-Shift-V. And at that point, then it should come in at the same size as it was in your original project. The other thing to do, so you could do it with, resizing it, but again, you're trying to guess to get it exactly the right size. The other thing you could do, so let me do this one more time here. So my caret's over here, and I just do a Control-V. Now, instead of trying to size this to the right size, I can, if I know what the size is, so in this case 5.5198 for the width, I should be able to select that, leave the aspect ratio on, and change the, just copy one of them, in this case the width, and then I should get the same size. You can see it rounded off we lost 1,000th of an inch, excuse me, 1/10,000th of an inch. But in essence, it's the same size. But it's much easier just to do the Control-Shift-V instead of the Control-V, and that should work. Then the second part of your question is when you save objects into your shapes, again, what I would do is if you're designing something, so let's say you're going to go into the business of selling these lampshades, and this is the panel size that you want. What I would do is when you make sure it's at the size that you want it, for whatever project you're working on or that you're going to want to copy it over and over for, then when you do an export and save it to your basic shapes, and so we'll call this a bell shade panel. Then, if I'm on another project and say, oh, yep, I need one of those bell shades patterns, I can bring in, just look at my shapes, double click on this, and it should bring it in at basically the same size as when you had exported it to your basic shapes. So again, wherever you save it, whether you save it to another project or whether you're saving it to or exporting it to your basic shapes, put it at the size that you think you want. all the time, and then when you bring it in through basic shapes, it'll stay that way. Or if you do a copy and paste from the original project to another project, as long as you do that paste in place, it'll stay the same size. So I think that was your. So I would definitely do that as opposed to starting over with a new pixel trace. And even images that you, oops, I don't want that one. Like there's an image in here. When this was exported, it was 4.2919 inches wide by 5.0924 inches wide. So when you pull it, unless you saved it in a very early version of Make the Cut, whatever size you save it at, it should come back in at that size when you pull it in from My Shapes. So if you are doing something that you're going to use over and over again, save it to. That's a great place to save it is your shapes. Export it to basic shapes, or save a project file that has those pieces in it, but make them the size that you want, that you're going to use over and over again. So Diana, hopefully that helped you out there. If not, if you're on, if you can just say yay or nay if that answers your questions. But if you're not and you're listening to the recording, then if you still have issues, send me an email or post a question to the forum, and we can help you out there. Okay, I don't see any questions on that. Anything else? So let's go to the next question. This is from Nan. So she has, she wants to make these type of, what do you call them, hangers? Holder cards for necklaces to cut out and Make the Cut. Let me just clean some of this stuff up here. Don't need to save that. Okay. Start a new project here. Okay. So again, this could be easily done. Again, depending on what size you want. But I would bring in, well, since we have a circle, let's bring in a circle because we'll need a couple of those. You could start with a rounded rectangle. I'm going to start with just a rectangle, even though these corners are rounded. You can go back and round them later if you want, or you can leave them straight. There's a little bit of rounding here, and I'll show you some of that as well. But let's just start with what I'm going to start with is basic rectangle, pull the edges out. I'll show you how to do that, and then we'll do Boolean Join to cut out the circle areas, and we should be good to go. So let's just make up numbers here. Let's say these are 1 inch, 1 by 3.
She did post some measurements.
Oh, did she?
Yes.
I might have missed that. Oh, here we go. 1/6 are about 2.25 inches wide and 5.25 high. Okay, so I'm going to take the wide as the widest part here. So if you would go from edge to edge here. So that means, oops. So let's say they're, let's start with 1.5. So 5.25, 1.5, maybe we'll go 1 3/4. Let's try 1.5 and 5.25. Is that what you said? Yeah. So let's start with that, and we'll see where we end up here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on snapping. And again, I like to use snapping and use regular whole numbers, just because it's easier to do things. I can center things easily. I can extend things evenly from both sides. Again, sometimes you might want to do it at a size that's better, and then resize it down to what you actually want to cut it at. So if this is too big or too small, we can resize it afterwards. We're basically going for the proportions here. And get an idea. So we want to end up with something about 2.25. So that means we've got to bring it out 3/8. Okay, so let's just try this. So obviously this I should just keep it on this one. So this isn't a rectangle, right? It's a rectangle, but the edges go out. So if you imagine what this would be if you extended these sides down without the circles cut out, it'd be almost like a stretched excuse me, a stretched hexagon. But we're going to start with this way. And I'm going to start with node editing. And you can see I have 4 lines. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click on this, and I'm going to say Insert Midpoint, and do the same thing on this side. I could also do a Control double-click to do the same thing. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this out. What did I say? I think I needed 3/8. Let's see if that's going to give us 3. Oops, 3. I didn't bring this one out far enough. 4 1/4. Oh, I moved it a little bit. Hang on a minute. It should be centered. Okay. It's kind of weird. Doesn't look exactly centered. Okay, so I guess that's not going to work again. I'll have to do this again. Okay, so I'm basically, we already split it midpoint, so bring it out. Oops, 3/8 there, and 3/8 there, and then we should. I don't know if that is exactly parallel here, but yeah, it looks about the same. Or the other thing, anytime you're designing something symmetrical, you just design it in half, half of it, and then flip it over, and then you'll get exactly asymmetric, but or symmetrical. And then we want to cut out two circles here. So those circles are probably going to be a little bit larger than 1 inch. So this is 5 1/4. Let's say this is going to be. I want to save one over there. So let's say this is going to be. Let's try 1 1/2. That's probably too big. Oops. Let's try 1 1/4. We'll see how that looks. And again, it's not a big deal in terms of exact. I mean, you basically want the rough shape, and then you can design, add your twist to it. And then I'm just going to do a. I did that fast. Sorry. When you have something selected, you can do a Control Shift and then left click. It duplicates it, so we get a duplicate of it. And then I'm going to do a Boolean Join, which means I need 2 shapes. This is going to be one shape. This is going to be the second shape. But there's 2 circles here, so I have to join them or weld them first. So I'm going to do a join, Control J, so they're one shape, and then select both. So I have both shapes now selected. We're going to do the Boolean Join, not shadow. We want to do the Boolean Join, and that's sort of what we want. So if that's a good shape that you like. You know what? Let's just bring this in. Copy image. Oops. Let's pixel trace this in. Import. Finish. Oops. What did I forget? You know what I forgot. Texture shape, or texturized path. 255. Apply. Import. Finish tracing. And now, let's make this something that's sort of as big as where we are. And I have snapping on, so it's not going to be quite exact here. So this is a little bit skinnier than that, but also the circles are a little bit bigger. So you could make bigger circles then to do that. Let's do this. Control C. Okay. I just wanted to save that somewhere so we didn't have to import it again. So let's go ahead and make this 1 1/2 inches. And bring it back up to the center. Duplicate it and bring it over here. Join them or weld them. Oops. Join them, not split them. Select both shapes, do a Boolean Join, and apply. Now that looks too skinny. So let's make one last change. Instead of bringing it right to the full, let's take each one of these and move it out. Yeah, let's try that. So join, select, Boolean Join, and apply. and that should be a little bit closer. So there you have your basic shape, and then you can decide, how big you want the holes at the top and bottom to be. So let's say we want them to be, I don't know, say about 1/4 of an inch. See how that looks. That might be too small, so let's say 3/8. And then put them wherever you want them. We'll center them just a minute. I'm going to Control Shift and click. Oops, I don't want to Control Shift that one. Let's just put everything on its own layer here and get rid of the things we don't want here. Got one too many of those. That's not the one I want to get rid of. That's the one I want to get rid of. And we'll move this one up so we can select it. Okay. And then we'll duplicate that and put it down wherever you want it. I would select everything and then do like a V for vertical, so everything is lined up vertically, and then decide, let me make these dark so we can see where they are, how far away from the edge. So this one looks like it's about 1/8 of an inch. This one looks like it's 1/4 of an inch. So let's move this one down a little bit and then put it back vertically. So if that's good. Too big a hole, you can change the size of the holes as well. Select everything and do a join. And then you have that shape with, instead of the keyhole, you have just a hole. And that might be too big. And then if you want rounded edges, there's lots of ways you can do it. I'll just show you a quick way because this also was a question on the forum. So let me just zoom in here. I'm just going to do one side here. And I'm going to do it by just quickly. If I double click, I'm in node editing, and I double click on a line, it's going to add a node at that point. So I'm going to double click there, and now you can see I have a line segment there and a line segment there. Same thing here, double click, and I'm going to get rid of these two segments by clicking on them and hitting the delete key. And then there was a question on the forum on how to connect two nodes, even if they're not the closest. So let me do this one more thing. Let's see if we can do this. So I'm going to select this. Oops. Let's do a break there. And I'm only doing this so that I can, don't want to do that either. Making things more complicated than I need to right now, but okay. I want to just move this segment out. I'm eventually going to get rid of that, but I just wanted to show that. So there's lots of ways to connect nodes to each other, right? You can go into node editing, click on a line segment, right-click on the node and say join to the closest node or join to the closest node with line. But in this case, we want to join this node with this node. And so if I right-click, the closest node is not where I want to join it, right? So if I do either of those, it's going to join it to that other node up here, which is not what I want. So one of the things you can do, two things you can do to connect them, you can either go to the freehand with the pencil, and if you hold the control key down, it does two things. One, when you hover over an unconnected, basically an end node, you get that red circle dotted line. And then if you can left click and drag, and even though I have snapping on and the snapping isn't going to get to that node directly, I can sort of hover over there until I get that red line and then connect, then let go of my mouse button and it will connect. The other way you can do it is with the, and actually let me just go ahead and turn off the snapping here. You can do it with the Bezier by just left clicking once here, going to where you want it to go, and you can see it sort of snaps to that an end node if you have it there, and then right click, and that does the same thing. So you can join nodes easily, even if you don't want to do the click and say join to closest node, just go to the pencil tool, hold the control key down, click on one and drag to the other and let go, and then you have it. And let me go ahead and now get rid of this one, because the whole idea of this was to make this round. And then, so now you can change this shape to be, you can do the neutralize segment to get the Bezier, or you could have just done, try to curve it yourself. And usually what I would do is clean it up and, basically get the nodes Bezier handles right where you want it. And now you have a nice curve there. If you want a bigger curve, you delete more of the segment. And obviously you can do that on all the corners. There's lots of different other different ways to do it, so that's how I would do it. So you said, Nan said that was close enough. Do you have any other questions?
Brian?
Yes.
The other way you could have done it, before you took the half circles out of the side, is you could do a shadow on it and do a rounded shadow.
Yes, that would have given you a good rounded edge too. So I'm going to just back out here. Get to where we were. Okay. And actually, we do want to maybe even do it after we do the circles because these were rounded too. So let's try it both ways. So let's do it this way first. So we can shadow it. Obviously not that big necessarily, but you can do it whatever size you want. And in fact, let's do it. Well, we don't want to do it that size because, well, let's try it. So let's do 0.5. So half an inch. So we get nice rounded things in there. We'll do an accept, and then we'll take the big shape, and do a shadow on it, and do minus 0.5. Oops, minus 0.5. And we should get back. Oh, sorry, I did one thing wrong there. No. Yeah, let's just do it just one way. Why did that not take? So let's do an accept on that.
You had minus in there.
Yeah, but why did it 0.2? Oh, it's going to give me, yeah, so if I come, yeah. Because basically I'm just doing a reverse, even though I have rounded, it's going to get to the point where it can't be rounded anymore. So in essence, we'd want to take this and resize it. But the reason Susan said to do it without the
and just
circles,
resize it.
Yeah, but otherwise, so let's do it her way first. So we're going to just take this one, shadow it, and make it as however big that you want it or not want it, to get the roundness that you want. And then we'll resize this down to, what was this size? 5 1/4? Yeah. So we'll lock aspect ratio on. Our top and bottom should still be the same. So we can do a 5.25. And so that we get it. I had lock ratio on. Why is that so much different? Well, it's an easy way to get the rounded is the main idea, and then you can do the shadows or the Boolean joins on that, and then you have a rounded version of it. And then if you still want these rounded, you could do that, but not a big deal either way. Anyway. So that's that. Thanks for that suggestion. I always forget about the shadow, mostly because a lot of times when I shadow, I don't use the rounded feature. I use the mitered feature. Okay, and then the last question is from Joycer. So make the cut needs to, in essence, run on Windows. So that's why, obviously, it's supported on XP. Well, XP is not supported anymore by Microsoft, but if you still have an XP machine, it'll still work on XP, Vista, Windows 7, Windows 8. It will not run on Windows RT, which is it looks like Windows 8, but Windows RT really is a separate OS. And it won't run on Linux or Macs or whatever without the Wine, which is in essence a Wine emulator, Windows emulator. But so therefore, it also won't run on iPad or Android tablets or iPhones, etc. So so when you say tablet, I'm going to go in the vein of Android tablets or iPad tablets and that kind of stuff. And it does not run on that directly. There are tablets that are full-blown Windows 8 systems. You know, the Surface Pro, I think. HP has a couple machines out that in essence can turn into tablets, but are full-blown Intel-based processors running full-blown Windows 8.1 with the Surface, you know, a touchscreen, I should say. So it runs on those. But in order to work on a quote-unquote tablet, the tablet has to be running full-blown Windows. It will not run on Androids or iPads, iOS's, or Windows RT. Now, the way people get around that is they will have on their desktop Microsoft, you know, like a Windows machine, desktop, they'll be running Make the Cut, and then on their iPad or their Android phone, or iPhone or Android tablet or a phone or any other thing that can run a remote desktop type of solution or a screen sharing type of solution, VNC type of solution, where in essence what you're seeing on your tablet or iPad is a representation of what's running on your, is basically the screen of your Windows computer, and then you can manipulate it remotely from that screen. And if you look on the forum, there's lots of threads talking about different apps that work on iPhone and iPads. I think there's one on the Android one as well. But that's, you're not really running Make the Cut on your phone or iPad or tablet. You're running an application that is allowing you to access your screen of your computer that is running Windows, Make the Cut. So hopefully that answered that question. Any other question? If you're on, if that didn't answer what you were asking, then let me know. But other than that, I think we've covered all the questions in the thread. Was there any unanswered questions from the GoToWebinar questions? I don't see anything flagged. No? Okay.
No, none came up.
Then just real quick, because this came up again today, on colors. Back in February, I put it on the forum. I think it was the 18th. The question came up about, custom colors. So anytime you have a shape, let me bring in one here. I used Dave's thing here. So I have a project, and let's say that I want the socks to be a particular blue, or the fox to be a particular orange, or the ground to be a particular yellow. I can go in and I can select custom colors, and I can go in and change it to whatever I want. But let's say I'm doing this on, and I'm going to use Okie Ladybug, I think is her screen name on the forum, had done a project that had, in essence, many of the Stampin' Up paper or ink colors by their name. And so if you want to use custom colors over and over again in other projects or across projects, there's not really a way to save it so that it's always there for you to bring in. I can, if I wanted to do a custom colors here, I could, in one of the layers, I could come in here and say, I want to add all the, any particular, colors and add them. Sorry. Let's try this. How come this isn't working here? Oh, that's because it's saving it line here. Hang on a minute. Okay, there we go. So, and I'm just making these up by, clicking on them right now, but obviously don't want white ones. So I could create, keep on doing that. I want this color here. There you go. So I could create custom colors here, and you can get up to 16 of them, and then when you save the project, it will, in fact, see if I still have it here. custom color. Here's one. You don't see much here because it's green, but I actually saved 4 colors here. So then I can select from any of the layers within that project. I can save it, change the colors to any of the shapes to those things that I have saved. That's only good for the file. So I can save this anytime I open up this file. They'll be available. But if I open up a new file and put something in there, I don't have those custom colors anymore. I'd have to start over from scratch. So one of the easiest ways to do this, let me just go back here, is bring in a project like Okie Ladybug. Is it Okie Lady or Okie Ladybug? I can't remember her name on the forum. And I don't have it in these files here, but I did save it as my shapes. So she had all these color blocks by name. And if we actually went to contrast, you'd see them a little bit better. You can see the colors are by the Stampin' Up names. So what I would do is you'd have just bring in that from your custom shapes on a project somewhere. Change the contrast so you can see it. So let's say that we wanted on our fox and socks, let's say we wanted the fox to be only orange, this particular color. And I showed this technique again on the February, I think, 18th webinar, Q&A webinar, so you can see that to go over it as well. But I copied it from a file then. But you can copy it, go to your shape. In this case, we want to do the fox, so I'm going to click on the fox layer. I'm going to just paste. Let me move my carrot over here. I'm just going to paste it. I don't care what size it is or anything, because what's going to happen is, because this is the top shape in the layer, so here's the layer. You can see the thing I just copied in, because I just copied it in, is the top shape of that layer. When I go to custom colors, it's going to have that color selected already. So all I have to do is say OK, and the fox changes to that color. So, and then you can delete it. So then let's say we want the socks to be, let's make it a little bit bigger change. Let's say we want him to have raspberry ripple socks for whatever reason. So select copy it, go to the socks page or layer, paste in place, or just paste. It doesn't have to be paste in place. Go to the layer, custom color, and there's my raspberry, whatever it was, ripple. Hit OK, and now my socks are that color, and we can delete that. And then whatever we want, the ground, not the ground, whatever to be. Let's say we want that to be wild wasabi, because that's the cardstock or ink that I have. I want to match it with. So I select that layer, paste, custom color, and hit OK, and then delete. So that's an easy way to change and use the same color. So once you have these defined, so it'll take a little bit of work. Wherever Oki had done this work for Stampin' Up, I think inks, not cardstock. So she went in and she created each of these, blocks, and then went in here and changed the color and changed it, the RGB values to the whatever it was for that particular ink. Somebody came up with those colors. So she added that. So this is a one-time thing, or however many custom colors you want. You can do it. You can add it. Save it to your custom shapes or your shapes by exporting it to basic shapes. And then whenever you want it, after you design your shapes and you want to change the whole layer to that, the easiest thing to do is, like I said, just copy in whatever color you want, and Bermuda Bay. We'll make the fox Bermuda Bay. Again, select that, Control V, custom color, OK, and there you have that exact color. So this color of this fox is 181/160, which should be the same as Bermuda Bay over here. to 181, 160. So that's an easy way, if you like working on custom colors, to just do that. It is not an option currently in Make the Cut to save custom colors across all projects or as a default custom colors, but it is pretty easy once you set them up like something like this to do it with this technique. And I'm sure there's other techniques of doing that as well. But that way you don't have to go in and actually type in numbers for the RGB values. Okay, so any other questions?
Brian?
Yes.
I've just got a comment. When you were doing the first bit, when you were putting the custom colors in, you were selecting the squares, which was taking it back to the value of white. All you've got to do is, when you were there, all you've got to do is double click and then add to custom colors, and you don't have to select a tile.
Oh, I have this down. Hang on. Yeah. That's what she's saying.
There.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you're making hard work of it.
Yeah. So that's how you can add. Of course, you would, if you wanted specific colors, you'd probably either put in the HGB values or the hue, saturation, luminance values, HSL values, to do that. But yes, you can do that. But again, this will only save for the file, the MTC file that you saved, that that layer in, or that you set up that custom colors. Okay, and that's good for any of it. So if I added another layer here, it would still be available. I have to add something to change the color for, but all those custom colors would. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I not save these when I must not have saved it. So let's do this one. I have it here. Oops. When you save them, they're actually saved. This one has it, I think. I only had like 4 of them in there. Okay. So even if I add another layer here and add another shape, those custom colors will still be available. And likewise, if I wanted to change a single shape, so that there's 2 shapes on here now, I can go to the single shape and I can still select those custom colors. So let's pick the darker one there. Oops. Okay. That was the same one. Anyway. Thank you, Susan. And you can select them, because that's what I did with this one. I let go across, and that's what I did with this one, but I was going too fast before. Okay. This is from, okay, if you look for, if somebody wants to look for Okie Ladybugs, I think it's called Color, well, let's see, what did I call it in here, because it's going to be close to that one. Oops, not that one. There's a thread that she added this to the thread, and I think if it's still there, she's given it for people to download. So look for Okie Ladybugs threads on the forum that has to do with Stampin' Up! Colors. It's going to be called Color Blocks Stampin' Up! Is the name of the MTC file somewhere on the forum. Okay, and then as far as changing the colors on textures themselves, let me just go ahead and bring in my pirate that we just had here. This is probably better to do on a image that is, like a pattern. It's not necessarily going to make sense on something that you have multiple colors like this. But in essence, the way you can change the color on here within Make the Cut is if you go to Change Color Texture Line and select Texture, you can mess with the contrast, the brightness, the saturation, the hue, and the gamma. So if we look at this here and I change with saturation, if I go down to 0, it's going to be in essence grayscale, right? So I can change it easily there. And then as I go up, I'll get different, it'll be in essence oversaturated. So my reds will be bright red, etc. The brightness is as anything, as normal. Same thing with the contrast, right? High contrast or low contrast. The gamma and the hue, as you go changing through it, it'll change. So you can see I go from the blues to the purples to the reds to the greens to the, back to the blues again, right? And there's a system to that. I mean, if you look at the value of hues, it's you know, you can find out what they are. Same thing with gamma, except it's more on the brightness level. So on this particular one, you won't see much difference. You know, like this doesn't look much difference than if we just change the brightness down or up to a certain level. But this is the only thing you can change. So I can't say, oh, I want the hat to be blue, but the flames to still be, you know, the orange, and the browns to still be the browns. So this would be more like if you had a polka dotted pattern. Texture polka dots. You know, so if I had something like this pink polka dots and brought it in, I want to bring in the whole thing. 255, texturized path, applied changes, and import. You know, now I can fool around with this, with doing the basically there's one color, so I can fool around with the hue to say, let's say I want to change that to more of a blue. You know, now I have blue polka dots, or you know, a blue background with polka dots. Likewise, you know, I can change the gamma or anything else as well. But so this works really well when you have single color patterns that you want to change the color of the pattern to, because you can change it to, if you're careful in here, you can change it to just about any color you want. You know, you have, you know, from 180 to minus 180, so 360 values you can change it to. The gamma, you're just going to get, you know, not much difference, like I said, than the brightness here. Let's neutralize everything. And the contrast. So anyway, hopefully that answered your question, Nan. Oh, I'm sorry, that was Sandy that asked that question. Oh, there's, yeah, so Nan found the oh, you probably already sent it. Sorry. I'm behind on the times. What can I say? It's, oh, there's two of them. So there's one 37,495 and 37,551. So what do we say? 37,514. That was one that you posted. Yeah, that's the one. And then what was the other one? 495, 495, 495. Did she post it here too? Oh, so this was the actual PDF, I think, probably from Stampin' Up. And then Liz did some, but these were, I think, in groups of 16. So there are a couple of them in there that you can look at. But basically what she did, or whoever did, you know, here's Stampin' Up's colors, and so it shows you what the RGB values are. And so she went in and created a square, called it Perfect Plum, and then typed in 142, 116, 145. So you can see this, if you have to do this over and over and over again for the same color, it'd be a lot easier to create, you know, something like this once, get it organized the way you like it, save it, and then just refer to it when you need to, you know, change your colors. So thank you for posting those links, and thank you to Okie Lady and Liz, and who else had done that here? Okie Ladybug. I don't know why I say Okie Lady. Sorry, Okie Ladybug, Liz, and Lindsay had posted the PDF. So anyway, it gives you an idea. It's not, you know, it's not the exact wish list that somebody had, but it's the hard part is creating this in the first place. And then once you have it created, the advantage of doing something like this is you're not limited to 16 custom colors, which you would be even if it was an option to save it across all projects. And this really is, it's a couple more steps. But the only disadvantage to this is if you wanted to do a particular shape on a layer, you'd actually have to move it out to, it'd be easiest to move it out to its own layer, change the color, and then move it back to whatever layer you wanted it. But a lot of people create the projects, a lot of people will create layers by color anyway. So, okay. Still nobody has their hand raised. We've gone a little bit over 2 hours, I think. So let me go ahead and stop. Is there any other questions that I missed that are already posted? I don't see any. So let me go ahead and stop the recording.